Hi, Dima. Oh, wait. Hold on. Let me unmute. Okay. Oh, now I can hear you. Okay.
How are you?
Good. How are you? It's nice
Good.
to see you face to face.
Same here. After so many emails, it's lovely to meet.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Anna.
Hi. Hi, Molly. Hi, Dima.
Yeah.
So nice to meet you both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for hosting and for putting the event together to both of you.
Yes.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for writing such a good book.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for taking some time out too, because I know you're super busy and yeah. And thanks to Anna. Anna did you did so much work on this, Anna. So that's why I'm just gonna say hello and then go away because you did so much of the organizing. And Anna's the one who wanted to bring in Deep Vellum, so I'm really excited about that aspect too.
Yeah, really excited about that. And I read Fowzia's book. Is that how you say her name? Is it Fowzia or Fowzia? Do you know?
I think it's Fowzia. I was listening to the KCRW podcast this morning. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah. What a beautiful book she created, isn't it? What a work of art.
Yeah. I hadn't realized, I think when I picked it up, I was like, oh, incredible book. And I hadn't realized all the illustrations are in there.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey.
Oh, wait.
I think you're muted.
All right. I think we can hear you now, maybe.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Dima. Who's Molly? Who's Anna?
Oh, I'm Molly.
I am Anna. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm Molly. Good to see you all.
Good to see you. We were just talking about how wonderful your book is.
Oh, thank you. I love yours too.
Really loved reading it and the illustrations and the photographs. What an experience. Really, what a beautiful book you've created.
Thank you, Dima. Yeah, from the moment I entered yours, I was like, I know this. I went through that same exact experience with my mom after she passed away. And so it was just and then so many cultural things and content and structure too. I felt at home, I should say.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to this.
Hi all. Sorry, I had trouble joining the meeting. Calling in by phone.
Oh, hi, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi y'all. I'm so sorry. I wish I could see your faces right now. I don't know what was going on.
No worries. It's nice to hear you.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you too. Are y'all doing okay? Everyone doing great?
Yep.
Hanging in there.
Cool. Good. Awesome. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. I heard y'all talking as I entered, so please proceed.
Oh, no.
Okay.
That's fine. I just got the notification that I'm the co-host. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, so I made you so do you see the little orange bar at the top? Okay.
Yes.
So Dima and Fowzia, you probably can't see the orange bar at the top, but I can make you co-host as well. Just so that way you can kind of see on the back end what it looks like. But basically, I keep just thinking about this as when I used to do theater, when I was younger, where it's the curtain is closed, so nobody can see us until we decide to open that curtain. So, okay, I'm gonna make you all co-hosts. And basically that just lets you, you can mute other people. You won't really need it, but I just think it's nice that we can all see the practice mode bar at the top. At least it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, talking before people show up. So, has anyone done these Zoom webinars before?
Just a couple for me.
Okay. Yeah. So they're pretty user friendly. If you scroll at the bottom, you can click participants and that shows you all the panelist names. It can show you the attendees names. Sometimes I like to cover that up because it makes me nervous, but you can see who all is here. And then at the bottom there is a Q&A button where people can submit their questions at the end. And so with that, Anna, I can talk. Asking you. The way we've done it before is just having the moderator read the Q&A, so that way, panelists don't have to do that extra work. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, that's how we've been doing it. But with the chat I just have all the questions come to me, so that is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so yeah, after I just kind of like, I just wanted to, when we start, I'll just say that for $2 radio and talk about how this is for a $2 radio, thank everyone. And then I'm going to turn off my camera. So I'll still be on the call or on the webinar the whole time. I just won't be visible to anyone. So,
Okay.
yeah. I think
Cool.
that's it from me, but Anna, I know if you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how this is going, so.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to check to make sure I have both of your names right. It's Dima Alzayat and Fowzia Karimi.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. And Dima, I wanted to make sure I got 2 names of your stories right. The first story in your book is, how do you pronounce that, if you don't mind my asking?
It's Russell, but I mean, you could
Russell?
just, I guess the closest would be, or how other, whoever non-Arab speakers would say, I guess, would be Gussel, which is also fine, like however you can manage.
Oh, yeah, only if you're sure. I know, yeah, we don't always have to cater to English speakers, right?
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
it's a letter that doesn't exist in the English language, so
Gotcha.
it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. And the second story, actually, it's Daughters of Manat.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Wanted to make sure. So I sent Dima, I don't know if you got the questions I had forwarded to Molly.
Yeah, I got
okay,
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you both saw those questions. I'm glad it seems like they seem like good routes to go. I'm also very open to, if at any point the 2 of you want to riff and just talk to each other, or like not really totally answer one of the questions, I'm completely fine with that. I'm just so excited to be putting these books and the 2 of you in conversation with one another.
Your questions
So-
are amazing, and I feel like we could just go with one of them for the entire talk, because there's
they're
so much there.
Yeah, no, it's a that, I guess, like a good bad tendency of mine is just to go, my reflex is like go as dense as possible from like the first jump. So yeah, so we'll get started. Is there a particular question that the 2 of you want to start with, or just start from the top and go through?
I mean, they're all really excellent. They all got me thinking, so.
Yeah, maybe with a question about the beginning of the books.
Sure.
How we each start differently than normal.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So start at the beginning with the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Awesome. And are there any others that you want to make sure we get to talk about all together, or?
I really like your question about the multiplicity of voices and the collaging, I think you called it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll highlight those on my document. It's also, I was listening to, Fowzia was saying to Dima and Molly, I was listening to the KCRW podcast this morning, and I thought it was so interesting how he was asking mostly completely different things from like what occurred to me at first, which is what I love about both of these books, is they bring so much that so many different readers can take things from. So for my intro, I had, after Molly goes, just like, welcome to everybody. I was gonna mention, shout out $2 Radio and Deep Vellum, and just, say like, we personally really love you guys, so I would love to put that out there. So introduce myself and White Whale, mention where folks can purchase their books on our websites and on Bookshop. Is there anything you want me to say in the beginning about the Zoom settings for the audience, or just mention we'll do a Q&A if people want to put the questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was going to say, sometimes too, I mention to people, like, they can ask the questions at any time, but just letting them know that, like, we won't be answering them till later.
Okay, awesome. And then I was just going to shout out those couple of funds and organizations that the 3 of us had brainstormed. I had like little blurbs about each of them, but then I was like, I also want to get to talking a little bit about the books and reading both of your bios before. So I didn't want to take up too much time just like monologuing in the beginning. So I hope that's okay that I just shout them out. I don't know if there's a way to email folks at the end with those names, if you wanted me to forward you that paragraph, or.
Yeah, so with Zoom, I do get, it does tell me everybody's email because they have to use an email
Okay.
to register. So if we wanted to do that, we can do that at the end.
Okay, cool. I can just copy paste that that paragraph for you and forward it over. And then I was going to read both your bios and also book blurbs, or do we want to leave the book blurbs to the side?
Do you think we have time for them?
I'm happy to make time if you want. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how many people will be coming to this without a lot of background knowledge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's useful.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll try not to, my tendency is to read too fast, so I'll try not to read so fast that it's pointless. Okay, and that's all I got.
Oh, and I was gonna say too, if you read too fast, it's okay too, because with the webinar features, I put a bio for everyone on there, including White Whale. So when people get
Awesome.
Zoom links, they can read that ahead of time, hopefully.
Perfect.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Are we all on video all the time or just the speaker?
Oh, that's up to you.
That's up to them. Okay.
Yeah. So let me think. When we did an event before, like basically you can choose to have your video up or down whenever you want it. So like maybe like when Dima's reading, if you feel like you want to turn off your camera just so you don't have to be, like consciously aware of what's going on, you can do that. So it's totally up to you. You have control over that. Yeah. And at least from the viewer's point of view, it's like, it's only going to show like the live videos. So yeah, it's only going to focus on who's speaking.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And I just realized, do you two have a preference of who wants to read first? I figured we'd start with the reading and then chat.
Yeah. No.
I'm open.
Molly, do you have a preference, or Sarah, preference of who goes first?
A preference from me. I think they're both fabulous.
Yeah. I'm whatever you two would like to do. I was thinking, I think like Dima's book is more recent, but only by like a month. So it doesn't really, I think either way, whatever you two would like to do.
Yeah.
It matters very much. I'm happy to go first. That's fine.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
I'll break the ice.
Yeah. And I'll turn my stuff off while both of you are reading too, and then just come back on for a discussion.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's 1. I'll give us like, well, I guess I can start broadcasting, but I'll probably give people like 2-ish minutes to like filter in. But a lot of people, what happens is if they've already tried to join the event, it just says like, please hold. And so people are probably waiting. So do we have any other questions before we get started, or?
Nope.
I am all good. Super excited.
Oh, I have one question. I was going to say that I think it's still true, but White Whale is still fulfilling online orders, right?
Yes, very much so. We're reopening next week, but we're still doing online. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
All right. Just before I tell people to order books from you, I want to make sure you get it. So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, if we're ready, I'll go ahead and hit broadcast and get started. We'll give people a couple minutes to filter in. Right. All right. Cool. All right, we have some people coming in. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give people a minute or so to filter in, and then we'll get started. I know that wasn't a full minute, but I feel like that's enough time. So, so again, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Molly from $2 Radio. Today's event, we have Dima Alzayat and Fowzia Karimi talking about their books and reading from them. This is part of our series $2 Radio, which is a new project that we kicked off that expands on our publications. And the virtual events kind of fit into that because, you know, with COVID, bookstores were closing. So we thought this was a great way for us to stay connected with readers and also stay connected with booksellers. So I want to give a big thank you to White Whale Books, who champion small presses. Anna, thank you for putting all this together. And White Whale was also the ones who reached out to Deep Vellum. So we are very appreciative of that. At $2 Radio, we really admire the work that Deep Vellum does. So we're really excited that we get to work with them on this event as well. That's pretty much it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Anna, who's at White Whale Books in Pittsburgh. So for anyone that's watching that has not picked up Alligator or Above Us the Milky Way, we really encourage you to shop with White Whale and support those indie bookstores that are slowly reopening right now. So, all right, thank you all again for joining us on a weekend afternoon, and I look forward to the reading and conversation.
Thank you so much, Molly. As Molly said, I'm Anna from White Whale Bookstore. I'm the events manager and one of the booksellers. I'm so delighted to be collaborating with $2 Radio and Deep Vellum and with Dima and Fowzia. So Deep Vellum and $2 Radio are both independent presses, respectively in Dallas, Texas, and Columbus, Ohio, that we just completely admire. They're, for us, without question, like two of our favorite presses in the country. They choose really thoughtful, fascinating titles to publish. We often recommend their books, like as top books in the store overall. And they're just wonderful people to work with. So definitely check out all of their titles, all of their backlists all year. So a little bit about White Whale Bookstore. As you can tell, this is not the store. This is my apartment. But normally I don't have to introduce the store because you're there, because none of us are there. Just really quickly, we're a family-owned general interest independent bookstore in the Bloomfield neighborhood of Pittsburgh. We love books, we love small press authors, and we love especially doing these events, conversations, readings. We've been missing them. We're actually coming back to the store next week on the 16th to some limited browsing. We have all of our books out, we have all the tables rearranged, so if you're in Pittsburgh, we'll be really excited to welcome you back. If not, you can, as Molly mentioned, you can check out what we've got online on whitewhalebookstore.com. You just click ready to ship. We have both Fowzia and Dima's books available there if you'd like to purchase them if you don't have them already. You can also check us out on our bookshop.org affiliate page. It's bookshop.org/shop/whitewhale. So we have a list for upcoming and recent events, and both their books are on there as well. So two more things quickly before I introduce both of our authors and we do a reading. For the settings on this webinar, if you have questions at any point during our reading and conversation, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll get to as many as we can at the end. And we'd also like to take a minute to just shout out a couple of funds and organizations in our respective cities that we'd appreciate you supporting, especially now, but going forward as our communities are coming together and especially trying to support our neighbors who are most marginalized under white supremacy right now. So in Dallas, that'll be the group Mothers Against Police Brutality. In Columbus, that's the Black, Queer, and Intersectional Collective, as well as the Columbus Freedom Fund. And in Pittsburgh, that'll be Sisters Pittsburgh and the Abolitionist Law Center. So you can find out some more about all of those groups online, and we encourage you to support them. So without further ado, I will introduce both of our authors and read a little bit about their books, in case you're not familiar with them. So Dima Alzayat was born in Damascus, Syria, grew up in San Jose, California, and now lives in Manchester in the UK. She was the winner of the 2019 Society of Authors ALCS Tom Gallen Trust Award, a 2018 Northern Writers Award, the 2017 Bristol Short Story Prize, and the 2015 Bernice Float Award. runner-up in the 2018 Deborah Rogers Award and the 2018 Zoetrope All-Story Competition, and was highly commended in the 2013 Bridport Prize. Her stories have appeared in Esquire, the Bristol Short Story Award Anthology, Prairie Schooner, and others. In the Land of Canaan was included in artist Jenny Holzer's projection for Our House, and it was part of Holzer's 2017 exhibition for North Adams at the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. Her articles have appeared in the Los Angeles Times, Flaunt, The Skinny, and Variety Arabia. Her debut short story collection, Alligator and Other Stories, this is a galley copy, but still love this one, was published this May by $2 Radio in the US and Picador in the UK. So a little bit about Alligator and Other Stories. The award-winning stories in this collection are luminous and tender. Her stories are rich and relatable, chronicling a sense of displacement through everyday scenarios. It is haunting, spellbinding, and unforgettable while marking her arrival as a tremendously gifted new talent. And Fowzia Karimi was born in Kabul, Afghanistan. She immigrated to the US in 1980 after the Soviet invasion of the country. Karimi has a background in studio art and biology. She received her MFA in creative writing from Mills College, California. Her work explores the correspondence on the page between the written and visual arts. She is a recipient of the Rona Jaff Foundation Writers Award and has illustrated The Brick House by Micheline Arahoni and Mark Home and Vagrants and Uncommon Visitors by A. Kendra Green. Above Us the Milky Way, also a galley, but still love this one too. Her illustrated debut novel about a young family forced to flee their war-ravaged homeland, leaving behind everything and everyone beloved and familiar, was published by Deep Vellum Publishing in April 2020. She lives in Texas. So a little bit quick about Above Us the Milky Way. It's a story about war, immigration, and the remarkable human capacity to create beauty out of horror. Ghost stories and fairy tales are woven with old family photographs and medieval style watercolor illuminations to create an origin story of loss and remembrance. Okay, I'm done talking for a sec, and we will turn it over to Dima for reading.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Anna, and for hosting as well. Thank you. So this is the final edition of the book, which looks a little bit different than the galley copy. And what I'm going to read from now is the second story in the collection, and it's called Daughters of Manat. She woke to the same slight wind drifting through the drapes. Again, the early dawn shadows spread across the ceiling, gray forms that appeared to be reflections of other shadows, a mirrored image from time primordial, its source erased. Outside, the ensemble of birds grew louder, a quavering tangle of notes. Who else do they wake? In the bathroom, she brushed her teeth, combed her hair, and in the mirror saw only the outline of her face. With the lights off, she dressed, a long dark skirt and a light blouse, thick tights and high boots. She passed a makeup brush across her cheeks and with her moistened fingertips smoothed her brows. The sound of her heels on the stone floor crushed the bird's chorus, and when for a moment she stopped moving, only a single warbler's interlude reached her ears, a thin melody that trilled and rattled. She walked to the window and opened the drapes, lifted the pane, stepped onto the windowsill and jumped. As she fell, her skirt unfurled and blossomed, and those who saw her from beneath said she glided across the sky. Her body blocked the rising sun, but her sheer blouse absorbed the early rays so that she glowed. A baker opening his shop watched her beam brighter as she moved until she was an orb ablaze, a burning Venus. A pastor on his way to the day's first service paused in the street to cross himself and plead the precious blood of Jesus. The Lord of Phosphorus was again in their midst. She felt as she fell that time had slowed. Before her, the earth spread indefinitely, and though she knew she hovered high above the ground, it seemed to her that there was but one plane and that it contained land and sky alike. This flattening allowed her to see far beyond her street, her city. She could make out the curve of Africa's Horn and the blue of the Red Sea. What else did she see? A simian fox hunting a mole rat, a masked butterfly fish searching for its mate. She realized the earth was smaller than she had been led to believe, that only its curvature had made its parts seem discrete. By the time she was 12, my Aunt Zainab was taller than her father in stature and fuller than her mother in shape. Her hair was black and bright and reached down to her waist. Her lids were rimmed in double rows of lashes, a genetic mutation that made her eyes gleam like polished sunstone. Boys she had grown up with, neighbors' children, who used to tackle her to the ground in games of tag and give her piggyback rides up and down the narrow hilly streets of East Amman, now moved out of her way with quiet irreverence, with mild hostility. After months of turning away suitors who stood at the front door with sweaty palms gripping boxes of sweets and chasing away others who trailed their daughter home from school and hissed at her heels, my grandparents decided something had to be done. Zainab herself had learned to not mind the stares and catcalls. She had a quick wit and a serrated tongue that could raise the confidence of even the most cavalier suitor, and to her, the boys were more like feral cats, skittish and afraid. But as they say, it was a different time, and girls like that had to be looked after in measured ways. And so by age 12, my aunt was married. The man was in his 20s and came from a devout family that agreed to my grandmother's demand that Zainab remain chaste until she reached womanhood. The first time I heard Zainab's story, I wondered how they could tell. Would it be when she grew taller? Was that how I, too, would become a woman? My own mother was shorter than some children. Was she not one? Child or not, Zainab was put to work in her in-laws' home, sweeping the courtyard and scrubbing the tiles, pulling hair cloths from drains and chopping onions for soups. Crates of onions, pyramids of onions. So many that even in her old age, my aunt despised them, would cover her nose with her sleeve, curse the day she was born, and rush outside to escape their smell. I don't know how long young Zainab had to endure her husband's family. My grandmother would say 2 weeks. Zainab claimed 2 months. But every day at sunset, my aunt would escape her in-laws and return to her family. Each night she stayed later and later in her parents' house, cursing both families and bemoaning her fate, crying hot tears and spitting at the floor, promising misfortune for them all. Each night she was dragged back to her new home, her hair wild and voice hoarse. When the neighbors intervened, it was with prayers and support, teas and ointments, but nothing worked. Zainab remained ferocious, going so far as to cut off her black bright hair, so short that the tops of her ears protruded, like a boy elf, my grandmother would say. Zainab threatened to do more, to take to the streets and humiliate them, to scream their names to strangers. Finally, it was agreed that a mistake had been made, and to everyone's relief, the marriage was annulled. My Aunt Zainab looked after me while my parents were at work. She was 17 years older than my mother, and her own children were grown and gone by the time I came along. I spent more time with her than I did with anyone else, and for years I thought this meant I was destined to become as ugly as she was. Arthritis gnarled her fingers into claws, and too much bleach made her scalp look like parched earth. You think it matters how shapely your mouth is, how long your nails are, she would say to me, leaning in close enough for me to taste her cigarette breath. On my 10th birthday, she made white cupcakes frosted purple and dropped them off at my school after lunch. As she stood in the classroom doorway holding the tray, she peered around the teacher to find me, her squinted eyes darting among the rows of children. I gave her a quick look of thanks and turned away, hoping no one would see her. That afternoon, we had a classroom party and wore pointed hats. Beneath colorful streamers and floating balloons, my friend Oni kissed me on the mouth in between bites of cake. Disney songs played from a small cassette player on the teacher's desk, and the teacher, Miss Nolan, was busy showing a student how to properly take Harry the hamster out of his cage, how to hold him with cupped hands so he felt safe. Licking frosting off my lips, I giggled at Oni, who smeared more frosting on her mouth and leaned in to kiss me again. But within inches of my face, she was snapped back by Miss Nolan's hands and led outside. I put down my cupcake and looked around at the other kids. I wondered if they had been watching us. What had they seen? Some of them crowded near the window, pushing and pulling one another to get a look. Through the glass, I watched Miss Nolan's mouth move rapidly as she spoke and Oni's lips tremble like she might cry. A sudden scream caused us to turn away from the window to see the kid who had been holding Harry chasing the hamster across the room. Soon, more than 24 students were on the hunt, trying to catch Harry and put him back in his cage. But the hamster was frightened and wouldn't stop scurrying, kept weaving his way between backpacks and books, desk legs and human ones. It wasn't long before laughter gave way to shrieks. Papers flew through the air and kids tripped over one another in pursuit. By the time Miss Nolan heard the racket and rushed back inside, it was too late. Someone had stepped on Harry, and one of his beady black eyes had popped from its socket, dangled at the end of a thin, bloodied nerve, and stared at the carpet. You wake, stale smoke clinging to your tongue, whiskey rising from your skin. The first few drinks of water scrape like sediment against your throat, and you force yourself to swallow. At the bathroom sink, you scrub smeared liner from your lids, but a faded gray rims your eyes, impervious to soap and water, insisting on its permanence. You brush your teeth and gargle and brush a second time as you turn on the coffee maker in the kitchen. When you comb your hair, the finest strands come loose from their follicles and fall. After 5, 10, 15 years on your head, they become invisible when they reach the carpet beneath your feet. What else do you shed unaware? Between sips of coffee, you squeeze beige paste from a tube and rub it into your skin until even freckles disappear. The mascara is dry and clumps between your lashes, and you hold its wand beneath a trickling faucet for a second, two, and push it back into the tube, give it a shake, and again twist it open. Count to 5 strokes per eye. When you run lipstick across your lips, you feel their dryness, the creases where the color will gather and form thread-like veins of red. You button a blouse, and as you pull on a pair of tights, you notice a run in one of the legs. The skirt, despite its length, cannot cover it. When you open the window, a fly buzzes past your ear and over your shoulder. Perfectly still, it perches on the dresser, facing you, its eyes examining you. As you fall, you wonder what you will sound like on the asphalt. If your face will look like those in movies, wide-eyed and surprised. You hope the bleeding is mostly internal, so no one will become sick at the sight. Moments pass before you realize the fall has slowed, that you are adrift in the air, and that while you cannot control where you go, you may turn in any direction you like. You feel your eyes changing, pushing against their sockets as each becomes 1,000 eyes. And though they no longer move, they see all things, millions of images converging to one. That is when you see them, standing side by side. The eldest among them is garbed in black, and the second glows like the sun. Only the youngest draws near, hands you one of 2 swords she holds, and whispers in your ear. What does she say? She asks why you have stopped calling her from the rooftop in worship, why your children no longer bear her name. You tell her you have neither a rooftop nor children, and that you never learned to pray. You try to follow her, to float as she does, but again you begin to fall. And I'll stop there.
Hi, I'll go next. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think my video is going. So I'm going to just describe. I'm going to describe the structure of my book first because I think it's important to know before I go into the reading. The book is an alphabet, and it's made up of a couple hundred pieces that range in length from a line or 2 all the way to 5, 6 pages, and it's the alphabet that kind of keeps all these pieces together. There are 26 alphabet pieces, and those are all written in the first person, so they kind of act as a guide for the reader throughout the rest of the novel. I'm going to start at the beginning and read to you the letters A and C. A. The alphabet. A set of letters arranged in a particular order. A set of letters that combine endlessly to form words on the page. What books are made of. What the sisters are made of. And these letters are set in their particular order as if a strong force runs through the alphabet, locking the symbols in place. And yet, the letters rearrange in inexhaustible combinations to write the words that give positive form to the formless. Like little magicians, the letters are forever in 2 places at once, bound in their fixed positions, for who could reorder the sequence of an alphabet and leaving their post to form this or that word? The 5 sisters are also lined up in a precise order, oldest to youngest, held in place by a logic and a force born of nature and chance. And like the letters of the alphabet, the sisters arrange and rearrange themselves in endless amalgamations to give form to what is unspoken and meaning to the ordinary. A, the land where I was born. A, the shore upon which I landed. A for all. for a story in its entirety, for how it begins, for how into it chaos or pain or desire enters, for what ensues within it, for where it takes us, for how all falls into place at its conclusion, and for the state in which it afterwards leaves us. I too am a reader, and I understand the need to consume all. I have this appetite. Moreover, in this book, oh, excuse me, I'm going to back up a little bit. I respect the boundaries set up by the two covers, and yet here in this book, they are no more than lids, no more than two soft curtains opening on a scene. Yes, I too crave the arc, but you will not find one here. The only way forward is through the alphabet. I think I'm actually going to read you the letter B instead of C. It's the next one. B. Before. All that happened and existed before the war and the land that birthed the seven of us. In the beginning, there was life, simple. Then the war arrived. In an instant, much happened, and suddenly we found ourselves upon a new shore and looked about us, at the sand, the waves, the bright star overhead. But what was there before in the first land in the beginning? Bud Nabud. There was not. In the beginning, a family, a great and an ever-growing family composed of a matriarch, our grandmother, my mother's mother, the only grandparent living when I came into the world. Many aunts and uncles, mostly on my mother's side, and many, many cousins of all ages and heights with myriad interests and manners, ensuring that we each had a friend of our own when we went visiting. And there was much visiting. There was much food and feasting. Tea served endlessly, sweets set out in great cascading hills, pillows piled on cushions laid over limitless red rugs. There was the regular celebrating and commemoration of births and birthdays, circumcisions and graduations, holidays and anniversaries, of life great and small, of loss great and small. There were many stories, those told and those unfolding, bud nabud, much talk and sharing, gossip and soothsaying. There was laughter and joy and life spread and interweaved across an entire country. We had my mother's grand family in the city, and my father's small family of simple farmers who lived in a village hundreds of miles in a winding mountain pass away. There was travel between the two, and always adventure and play. Wagon rides and tree swings, carrots tugged out of the ground, corn twisted off tall whispering stalks, goats, chickens, cows, and dogs to feed, chase, and climb, a gurgling brook, and the strawberries that grew on its banks. Hills covered with dwellings, dwellings bursting with life, streets filled with the traffic of pedestrians, vendors, cars, buses, and bicycles. Connecting all were neighbors, grocers, barbers, midwives, tailors, each like kin. There were markets and movies, street peddlers and their singular calls accompanying a rainbow of balloons or mounds of blood-red beets which bobbed and peeked over the garden wall. There were rivers and picnics and the bright-colored, soft-curved automobiles that delivered us there. Parades and television shows, school and friends and painted pictures of sweet, ripe watermelon, or sailboats crossing bright blue seas. And then there was war. In an instant, much happened, and suddenly. And war, on entering, obliterated everything and all. War, on entering the peaceful scene, turned it upside down and inside out. It shattered, severed, distorted, erased, violated, obliterated life, great and small. Harmony, great and small. Feeling, great and small. Wonder, great and small. What was a flower to war, a child to war, a culture, a melody, a river, a picnic, a ritual, a statue, a farmer, a fairy tale, a people, a memory, a taxi driver to war. So the buildings and farmlands and mountain passes were bombed. So the people were disappeared, raped, tortured, dismembered, swallowed whole. So the children's senses became keener, the adults' minds numbed, their skin crawled. So the horror straddled and settled over the land. In the beginning, there was war. Before the war, there was family, there was life, simple. See how little patience I have for the orderly telling of things. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you for reading these passages and for these books. If you're at home and you enjoyed that as much as I did, feel free to like do a little round of applause to yourself for these authors. So we'll get started with some questions, discussion. Again, please feel free, there's a Q&A button at the bottom here. If you have some questions as we go, feel free to put them there and we'll get to them at the end. Okay, so good place to start is at the beginning. So both of these books begin in very distinct but different ways. Alligator begins with not even a death, but a burial in Guzel. And Above Us the Milky Way begins with not a scene or a dialogue or exposition, but there's actually a preface in which the writer, in which you, Fowzia, say that the book does not desire to be placed, quoting now, in too close a proximity to today's cultural or political landscapes. And that preface ends with the simple sentence, "Let me remember." So I'm wondering if both of you could talk about those choices of beginning the book in an alligator in a burial and Above Us the Milky Way in a direct conversation with the reader to read the book in a specific way.
Okay, I guess I'll answer that first. I don't know that it was really like a conscious choice to start with the burial as much as sequencing in a short story collection is definitely important, even though I, as a reader of short story collections, jump around loads and don't really respect the author's sequencing decisions. So, and I think a lot of readers are like that, but I was very obsessive and methodical about how I sequenced the collection. And a lot of that was because I had worked really hard to have a lot of tension within each story, but I also wanted that tension to exist between the stories. So I wanted them to really work against each other. And a lot of that had to do with, I was writing a lot about Arab American identities, and I really wanted to avoid this kind of easy essentialism or like representing the Arab American. And the identities in the book are quite nuanced and very varied. And so I kind of worked to have stories that represented quite different identities to follow one another so that they could kind of push gently against one another, so that if the reader, let's say, had finished a story and felt like, oh, right, yeah, now I understand, what an Arab American experience is, that next story would kind of pull the rug out from that easy understanding and make them kind of rethink it, so that hopefully by the time they get to the end of the book, they just have kind of all of these varied stories, and no easy definition of what it means, but multiple definitions. And so the reason that I ended up going with reside in the end, or in the beginning, was really because I wanted to open with a story that, like some of the other stories in the book, that played with form a little bit. And that story, which is briefly, just to say what it's about, it's briefly about a woman who's preparing her younger brother for burial, for an Islamic traditional burial, and she's washing him, and she's and we're kind of going in and out of her subconscious kind of as she's doing it. And at part of the story, or what gets integrated into the story, are also these nursery rhymes that she and her brother might have been told, or songs that her parents might have sang to them, or that they sang to each other, and that those take up a good amount of space in the story. And so I really wanted to start with a story that introduced that kind of play with form, just to kind of ease the reader into other experimentation with form later.
For me, that in the preface, that request, I wanted to make it a really explicit one from the beginning, because I think we live during a time where we're just obsessed with information. We're addicted to it. And I think that we take story for granted, and we take story and we flatten it, we hammer it down into information, where it loses its life. And I think as a result, we lose our humanity. And so I just wanted to say in the beginning, okay, this is, if you want information or biography, look elsewhere. This is a tale that you're entering. So it's a request, and almost akin to, you know, welcome to my home, please take off your shoes. But yeah, I thought that should be there in the beginning, so that wasn't the direction that people went, because I think we're so used to doing that today.
Great, thank you, both of you. I really appreciate that. And going off something, because I think this will lead well into another question I have, going off something Dima said about sequencing. In both of your books, you're very intentional about sequencing. And Dima, that has the effect of, you know, pushing the reader as soon as they get maybe comfortable in a specific space or with a specific kind of character and their identities. And in Above Us the Milky Way, that sequencing, there's the alphabet, of course, and then specific stories that fit in under different letters, and then start to overlap through time. So I'm wondering, Fowzia, if you don't mind speaking a little bit more to like that sequencing, how you came to put the alphabet together and then the pieces under each letter of the alphabet.
Yeah, so I had been working on, I worked on this novel for a total of 10 years. And during the first 5 years or so, I'd written all these pieces, and they're just, you know, different voices, different sort of themes coming in and out. And I had it all in my head, like, you know, pretty much like every piece, the language, all of it was in there. And then at some point it just became so large that it was becoming a little bit of amorphous. And the alphabet came in as a way to organize that information, the story, and it really, it's weird. It sort of came in, and there's a mechanics that's already there, you know, inherent in an alphabet, and it just like crunched and everything fell into place one after another. But the next 5 years that I worked on it, as I'd write additional pieces, everything would blow out of that structure again. And so it was a matter of bringing it back each time and reorganizing it. And there were, you know, probably 7 or 8 complete books at every point. And it wasn't until I would say the last maybe 7-8 months where things just started to kind of cozy up against other pieces, and everything started to really make sense. I think there's so many ways you could read the book, and I invite the reader throughout to just enter and exit at any point. I think that's very much possible, and it's something I welcome. But at the same time, there's a real deliberateness to really every word, every punctuation mark, every title speaks to every other, every title speaks to the content within the piece. And that was probably the hardest part about writing the book structurally, is just fitting all that in, and you know, you have to kind of shut your eyes and listen, because it's there. The language tells you where to go with it.
I love that. I love shut your eyes and listen. I feel like that's a good directive for both of these books. And I also just want to show people who maybe haven't had the chance to pick up Above Us the Milky Way. So the chapters or sections, letters of the alphabet start with a big letter. This one's home, and then there's a piece about home, and then the pieces can continue with different sized vignettes. So great. So that, I feel like that moves well into a question I have about form in both of these texts. Something is happening in both of them that I was calling to myself and to both of you collaging, something I'm really excited about. So there's a lot of collaging of the text with images, photographs, as we saw with what I just showed, in Alligator newspaper clippings, YouTube transcripts, cutouts from message boards, and more, illustrations in Above Us the Milky Way. There are also moments, like Dima, you mentioned with the first story, of poetry, verse, nursery rhymes that seep into the prose. To me, what came across for me was a reminder that a full story is often properly told by that puzzle piecing of what might seem like unlike parts together to form a concrete whole. And I also got like a reminder that images are language, carry language as well. So I was wondering if both of you could speak to that, that collaging. And Dima, we can start with you, and I'll just show people like what alligator looks like. So there's message board, newspaper clipping, interview, testimony. At the very end, there's like actual newspaper photocopies. So yeah.
So with this title story, Alligator, its launch point is the true story of a lynching of a Syrian American couple in 1929 in Florida. And when I began working on the story, at first it was just bits of really narrated monologues of different characters that I felt like were impacted by this lynching. And I was writing them really kind of in fragments and not sure how to write my way into the story. And I started incorporating first kind of the newspaper articles, and then later, you know, things like letters and witness testimonies, and then later kind of whole fabricated TV scripts and plays and all of that. And before I could kind of really assess why I was doing it. And it was kind of maybe after I'd written like half of the story that I kind of took stock of why I was approaching it in this way. And I realized that I was taking on this kind of pretty weighty historical event, and I wanted, as the writer, to kind of avoid ascribing a final meaning to these people's death. I also wanted to undermine kind of my own ability as the author, as the writer, to tell their story. So in some of the fragments, I have some of the characters question my ability to tell the story. And they ask me, like, who are you to kind of know, you know, what's occurred? And because the story also takes on so many marginalized voices. There's, you know, Black Americans in the 1960s who are testifying to, you know, the lynching and to their experience as Black Americans in the US and the racial violence. And there are Indigenous American voices, and that's quite an area to kind of, you know, navigate your way through as a writer. And so the fragmentation for me, that collaging, was a way to kind of undermine even my own ability to tell this conclusive story about racialized violence in the US, and instead to kind of offer these tidbits of like historical evidence, but then also imagined narratives, and have them kind of mash up against one another, and to let the reader come away with their own meanings, hopefully.
I can speak to image specifically because it's really important to me as a visual artist as well. In my head, there's always both image and language that rise up simultaneously, especially when I'm doing creative work. But kind of all, you know, essentially like during the day or night before bed, I shut my eyes and there's imagery there, which can be really exhausting. But when you're writing, it sort of gets funneled, focused down, and as I write, images rise up, and so I'd mark the ones that I felt really spoke back to the text as I was moving through the book. And there were many times for several years where I thought, no, I should let the language do the storytelling, let it do its own thing, but the images would keep coming in. So I included them, and I think you know, we do function through language, through text on the page, but I think we're all real as well, and we get different information from the two forms. I mean, just emotion alone, what you pick up from looking at a painting versus what you pick up reading something. They move through different channels in the mind, and they evoke different emotions, different thoughts. And I feel like when you marry the two, you get something else synchronistically that wouldn't happen with one or the other alone. And I feel that way with form, not just image, like in Dima's book, the way things are laid out, how sometimes the text narrows down on the page, and sometimes it opens up with lots of space. And those things all function to do something to you while you're reading. And I think it's really important and really exciting to play with those things in form.
Thank you, both of you. I appreciate that. And I think I showed some of the photographs in Above Us the Milky Way. This is, for me, this image that I'm about to show is the one that has stuck the most in my mind, and it connects with the excerpt, the vignette it connects with is called Mirror. It's in the S section, and blood ran under door jambs, along gutters, down hills. It filled basins, wells, and valleys. It colored rivers and lakes, and soon the clouds reflected red. And hearing that is intense. And then the image that it's paired with just completes that page. It has the page hit the reader in a very specific, different way than it would without the image. So
can I just
I pause there. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Just something about that image. So a lot of these images, well, there's a mix of things. There are things that just came up in my mind, and others that are very much inspired by old illuminated texts, both Eastern and Western, so Central Asian, Turkish, and from throughout the West. And that particular image is from a really old Bible. I can't remember which one right now, but it's a really dark illuminated manuscript. There's a lot of violence in it, and it's sort of this clearing out of evil by God, by the saints who come down, and there's chopping off of heads and all of that.